The coalition fleet floated silently among the stars, shadows of distant nebulae stretching across the void like pale fingers. Ships once gleaming with pride now bore the scars of battle, hulls dented, shields flickering, engines sputtering. Captain Elias Riker stood on the bridge of the Aurora, hands gripping the console so tightly his knuckles whitened. Around him the alien council leaders murmured in their strange tongues, worry etched deep on their faces. "We don't have much time," Riker said, voice steady but low. "The enemy's closing in. If we stay here, we're finished." The council leader, a tall serpentine alien named Vethril, hissed softly, "Our options are gone. Retreat is impossible. The nebula traps us and their fleet numbers 5-1 against ours." Riker's eyes swept across the starfield, watching the distant glint of enemy ships maneuvering like predators. His mind raced. Humans were not the largest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced, but humans had something no one else had. An instinct to survive, an ability to think in ways no one expected. He straightened. "Then it's time we try something they'll never expect." The council stared at him. Vethril's eyes narrowed. "What do you propose, human?" Riker took a breath. "We summon it." A tense silence fell. The word echoed across the bridge like thunder. "Summon it?" Vethril hissed. "You dare speak of the Ancient One? The being the legends say no one can control?" Riker nodded. "We have no choice. We're trapped. Their fleet will destroy us in hours. And yes, it's dangerous. But I've studied the old maps, the forgotten transmissions. There's a chance, just a chance, we can call it here." The alien council exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered among themselves, fearful of the unknown. Others looked at Riker with curiosity, sensing his confidence. Finally, Vethril's long, scaly head tilted. "Humans, you always take risks that no other species would. Very well. Show us what you mean." Riker moved to a console covered in glowing symbols and unfamiliar glyphs. He tapped sequences into the interface, drawing on knowledge gleaned from centuries of human curiosity and alien archives. "This is part science, part faith," he explained. "We create a signal the Ancient One cannot ignore. We don't know if it will come, but if it does, it will help us. And if it doesn't—" He trailed off, letting the tension hang in the air. Vethril's tail lashed. "If it does not come, we die." Riker shrugged almost casually. "Exactly. Which is why we must try." The bridge went quiet. Outside, the enemy fleet advanced like a tide of steel, relentless and unmoving. The nebula's misty clouds reflected the distant starlight, turning the scene into a surreal battlefield of shadows and light. Every second counted. Riker keyed the final sequence. A hum filled the ship, vibrating through the decks, reverberating in the hearts of those aboard. The stars seemed to shimmer, bend slightly, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then on the sensors, an unusual energy reading appeared. "What is that?" Vethril hissed, voice trembling with both fear and awe. Riker's lips curved into a small smile. "I think we just got their attention." The hum grew louder, then suddenly stopped. The energy reading intensified, forming shapes that no one aboard could comprehend. It was enormous, impossibly vast. The bridge crew exchanged panicked looks, unsure whether to feel hope or terror. Then it happened. From the depths of the nebula, a shape emerged. A massive, luminous figure, neither fully mechanical nor completely organic. Its form shimmered with colors that seemed impossible to the eye, patterns shifting and changing as though reality itself was bending around it. The enemy fleet froze, their sensors screaming warnings. The Ancient One had arrived. Riker felt his heart race. "All unit, stand by. Don't fire unless I give the order. Let them make the first move." Outside, the Ancient One hovered silently, a giant presence that seemed to study everything at once. And then, in a voice that echoed through the minds of everyone aboard, it spoke. Not words exactly, but thoughts. Strong, clear, and intelligent. "Why summon me?" Riker stepped forward. "We are cornered," he said aloud, though the Ancient One could hear him in thought. "Our fleet is trapped. The enemy will destroy us. We have no other hope. Please, we ask for your help." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the Ancient One's form shifted, almost like it was smiling. Or at least humans would call it a smile. A warm, curious energy radiated from it. "Interesting, you are—" "Different," Riker swallowed. "Different?" "Yes, we're humans. We don't give up, even when everything seems lost." There was a pause. Then in a ripple of light, the Ancient One moved. It extended tendrils of energy toward the enemy fleet. With the slightest gesture, Massive ships began to spin out of control, caught in invisible forces that no conventional weapon could produce. Enemy captains screamed in confusion as their warships collided or spun helplessly into the void. The bridge erupted in awe. It's incredible," shouted one of the alien officers. They can't stop it." Riker remained calm. "We haven't won yet. Stay focused. Watch and learn. Follow my orders. The Ancient One is helping us, but it will not fight for us directly. It reacts to threats in ways we don't fully understand." Hours passed. The Coalition fleet, guided by Riker's commands and the mysterious interventions of the Ancient One, began to maneuver in ways the enemy could not predict. Ambushes, traps, feints, all orchestrated with a strange, organic intelligence that seemed to anticipate every move of the opposing forces. Outside the nebula, stars streaked past as ships engaged in high-speed maneuvers. Lasers flared, shields sparked, and explosions lit the darkness. Yet through it all, the Ancient One remained above the chaos, an enigma that reshaped the battlefield with subtle but decisive actions. Bethril approached Riker, voice a mix of awe and fear. "Human, this creature, it is unlike anything I have ever seen. How did you know it would come? How did you know it would help?" Riker shook his head. "I didn't. I only knew that we needed something. Someone unexpected, something the enemy could never predict. That's what humans are good at, turning the impossible into a chance. This is chance multiplied." Another alert sounded on the console. A massive wave of enemy reinforcements was approaching. The Ancient One shimmered, reacting instantly. Entire sections of the nebula warped subtly, redirecting the incoming ships, scattering them like leaves in a storm. The Coalition fleet seized the moment, pushing forward into positions no one had thought possible. Still, Riker knew the battle was far from over. The enemy would regroup. The Ancient One might leave at any moment. And while today they had hope, tomorrow could bring new dangers. But for now, they had a chance. As the bridge crew watched the chaos unfold, a feeling of cautious optimism spread. Humans, cornered and outnumbered, had called upon the galaxy's most unexpected ally, and it had answered. Riker allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. "Sometimes," he murmured almost to himself, "the right choice isn't the safe one. It's the one that surprises everyone, including yourself." The stars stretched endlessly ahead, full of uncertainty, full of danger, but for the first time in a long while, full of possibility. And somewhere in the shifting colors of the nebula, the Ancient One watched, curious about these strange, unpredictable creatures called humans, and perhaps, just perhaps, willing to stay a little longer than expected. End of Part 1. The nebula's mist swirled around the Coalition fleet, casting long, shifting shadows across the battered ships. Captain Elias Riker stood on the bridge of the Aurora, eyes scanning the battle in progress. The Ancient One hovered silently above the chaos, a living constellation of energy that bent space and light around it. Its presence was calming and terrifying at the same time. A reminder that humans were no longer facing this fight alone, but they still had to fight smart. "Enemy reinforcements approaching from Sector 7, announced Lieutenant Mara Chen, her fingers flying across the console. "They're larger than anything we've seen before." Riker's jaw tightened. "Then we'll need to use them." "Use them?" Mara blinked. Riker gave a small smile. "Yes, the Ancient One reacts to threats, yes? But it's also curious. It notices patterns. Let's give it something interesting to notice." He tapped into the fleet's navigation controls, plotting a dangerous, unpredictable path through the nebula. Their smaller ships darted between swirling clouds of gas, weaving around debris fields and gravitational anomalies. The enemy fleet, massive and rigid, struggled to match their movements. Bethril hissed softly. "Your plan? It is reckless, human. One misstep and we die." Riker finished for him. "Yes, but right now a straight fight would kill us anyway. Sometimes survival means thinking differently." Outside, the Ancient One reacted instantly. The nebula's clouds shifted as if alive, forming barriers and funnels that guided the enemy ships into disadvantageous positions. Massive warships collided or became trapped in eddies of energy they could not escape. The Coalition fleet struck quickly, disabling enemy ships before they could react. Riker felt a surge of pride. Humans had always thrived on chaos, on using their wits when all odds seemed stacked against them. And now, with the Ancient One's help, That chaos became a weapon of unimaginable power. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the fleet. One of the enemy's largest battleships had broken free and fired a beam that tore through a coalition frigate. Alarms blared. Crew members scrambled to repair damage and tend to the wounded. Riker clenched his fists. Focus, do not panic. The Ancient One is covering us, but it cannot fight every battle for us. He activated the ship's comms. All units, follow my lead. We hit them where they are weakest. Observe, adapt, and strike. The coalition ships surged forward, humans and aliens alike working in perfect coordination. Riker's strategy was simple. Confuse the enemy, force them to react unpredictably, and then strike with precision. The Ancient One amplified their efforts, subtly manipulating space itself, bending enemy formations into chaos without directly touching them. Hours passed like this. Each strike, each maneuver, was a calculated dance of human ingenuity and alien obedience, guided by the enigmatic presence above. Slowly, the tide of battle shifted. Enemy ships began to retreat or fall into traps. The coalition fleet pressed its advantage, recovering some of the lost ground. Yet even as hope grew, Riker knew this battle was far from over. The enemy commander, a ruthless alien named Kalith, was cunning. He would adapt, strike harder, and likely find a way to exploit any weakness. "Captain," Mara said, her voice tense, "the enemy flagship is moving around us. They're targeting the Ancient One directly." Riker's eyes narrowed. The Ancient One, though massive, was not invincible. "Then we protect it," he said simply. "All units form a perimeter. Shields up! Don't let them touch it." The enemy flagship surged forward, energy beams slicing through the void, attempting to corner the Ancient One. But as it approached, the Ancient One reacted in ways no one expected. A wave of energy erupted, not destructive but disorienting, twisting gravity and light. The flagship spun uncontrollably, engines flaring, weapons misfiring. Kalith's crew screamed in confusion. Vethral's eyes widened. It is clever. Not just powerful, clever, Riker nodded. That's why we called it. It understands patterns, and humans are full of patterns the enemy can't predict. Combine them, and we're unstoppable. Seizing the opportunity, the coalition launched a coordinated attack. Smaller ships darted in and out, striking weak points in the enemy's formation. Energy beams from human and alien ships combined with gravitational distortions from the Ancient One to create perfect traps. Enemy ships were destroyed or forced to flee. Riker felt a surge of exhilaration. This was not brute force. This was strategy, teamwork, and daring, the essence of human strength magnified by an ally beyond imagination. Suddenly, an alert blared. "Multiple enemy ships escaping toward the outer rim," reported Lieutenant Chen. "If they regroup, they'll come back stronger." Riker's eyes flicked to the Ancient One. For a brief moment, it pulsed, almost as if contemplating. Then, with a gesture of glowing tendrils, it created a barrier that sealed the escape routes. Enemy ships were trapped. Vethral hissed in amazement. "It anticipates everything. It sees every move." Riker allowed himself a small smile. "Sometimes all it takes is being unpredictable. The enemy thinks in straight lines and numbers. We think differently." Hours turned into a tense, exhilarating dance. The coalition fleet pressed forward, striking and retreating, guided by Riker's orders and the Ancient One's interventions. Slowly, the enemy's advantage crumbled. Ships that once seemed invincible were destroyed or captured. Finally, Kalith's flagship, the largest of all, moved into view. It was battered but still dangerous, its weapons capable of destroying multiple ships at once. Riker's heart pounded. This would be the final test. "All units," he said, voice steady, "focus on their flagship. Use everything we have learned today. The Ancient One will assist, but we must strike with precision. This is the moment humans prove they are more than just survivors, they are winners." The fleet surged forward. Smaller ships attacked from angles no one expected, while the Ancient One created illusions and distortions that confused enemy sensors. The flagship fired relentlessly, but its shots missed or hit empty space. Riker gave the order. "Fire!" Energy beams, missiles, and plasma blasts converged on the flagship from every direction. The Ancient One wrapped the ship in a swirling vortex of light, destabilizing it from within. With a final coordinated strike, the flagship erupted in a brilliant explosion, scattering debris across the nebula. The bridge erupted in cheers. "We did it!" shouted Mara Chen, tears of relief in her eyes. Vethral bowed his head, voice reverent. "Human Captain Riker, you have done the impossible. You have turned the tide with courage, with cleverness, with humans' unique way of thinking. Riker shook his head. I didn't do it alone. Every crew member, every ally, every alien here, and the Ancient One. We all played our part. That's what makes humans strong. We never forget we are part of something bigger. The Ancient One hovered above the debris, its light dimming slightly. A gentle pulse like a sigh passed through the fleet. Then almost imperceptibly it began to drift away, back into the depths of the nebula from which it had emerged. Riker felt a pang of sadness. Wait. Will you stay? Will you help us in the future? For a moment, nothing. Then a thought reached him, perhaps. You are interesting. Perhaps next time I will stay longer. And with that, the Ancient One disappeared into the endless void, leaving the Coalition fleet victorious but wondering if such an ally would ever return. The surviving ships regrouped. Damaged but alive, humans and aliens alike tended to the wounded and salvaged what they could. Across the galaxy, news would spread of the strange, luminous being that had helped the humans, and of humans themselves who, even when cornered, could summon hope from the unknown. Riker stood on the Aurora's bridge, watching the stars stretch endlessly ahead. He knew the galaxy was full of dangers, full of enemies far stronger and more numerous than they could imagine. But he also knew this: humans had a spark, an ingenuity, and a courage that no one could predict, and sometimes that was all that mattered. Today we survived, he said softly. Tomorrow, we will thrive. Because humans don't just fight. We adapt, we learn, we surprise, and when all seems lost, we find a way. The stars twinkled in silent agreement, vast and indifferent, yet somehow brighter to those who dared to face the impossible. And somewhere, deep in the nebula, the Ancient One watched. Curious about humans, creatures small, fragile, and reckless, yet capable of shaping the fate of stars. And in that endless dark, a faint pulse of light hinted that this was only the beginning. End of Part 2.